Hello and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is none other than Barbara Hudson. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much. Now, Barbara is the author of the book Faces in the Mirror. Book doing very well, by the way. Everybody's talking about the book and its contents, basically sharing your life story.
Oh yeah, something I didn't want to do.
Something you didn't want to do. Now, this book, I read some of the excerpts from it. And obviously it was something happening here that was very painful for you, but you actually put it into words in this book. What was that experience like for you, talking about your life story?
Well, I remember that I was sitting in my room because I, come from being a playwright for about 20-something years.
Mm-hmm.
And God spoke to me and said, I need you to tell your story. And I spoke back to God and said, I don't think so, because everybody don't need to know everything. I was brought up to the point of saying, what goes on in here stays in here.
Right.
But I was obedient, and I wrote the story, no holds barred. I told it all, and I put it out there. And the purpose for that was allowing people to know that no matter what type of filthy rags you've had in the past,
Mm-hmm.
God still loves you.
Yeah.
And there's a healing process to go through. But you can make it because here I stand right now, here I sit right now talking
Right.
to you. So
Right.
that was my whole reason behind writing the book, is for healing for others.
Right. And it's always important that we share our stories so that we can make a difference in the lives of others. That's the importance of what we go through. A lot of times it's not always about us, but it's to bless other people through the stories
Right.
that we share. Now, one of the things that I found that I knew would have to be painful for you, we talked about rape and molestation in your book. Take me back to what that was like for you at the age of, was it 9?
Well, no. You have to understand, this part is that I was adopted, so at 11 months,
Okay.
from a family of 18 children. 8 were killed in a fire, and 10 siblings left. I was the only child given away out of 10 siblings.
Wait, let me back up for a second. Did you say 18?
Children. My mother had 8. My biological mother had 18 children, and 8 were killed in a fire, and 10 of us was left. And I was the only child out
Wow.
of the 10 that was given away.
Okay.
So, being so, I really didn't fit in, even though it was my great aunt and uncle that raised me.
Mhm.
For some reason, I guess people thought, well, she's really not part of this family.
Okay.
So it was, unfortunately, someone within the family that molested me from 5 years old to 9 years old.
5 to 9, and it was a family member.
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fast forward now to the situation where you were actually raped at the age of 12.
Yeah. My mom had this perception that you had to do really well in school. I couldn't bring home B's. That was a failure. I definitely couldn't bring home C. So my mom was into all this religious cult-like stuff,
Okay.
healing and all of that. So there were these 2 brothers. One was a neighbor, and one came from Corpus, and he was supposed to be the spiritual guru, for a better choice of words.
Okay.
And she said, I came home and I brought home a B.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had a fit, and she was like, well, you got to go see brother such and such. He's coming, he's going to look in the water, and he's going to tell you, help you get these grades up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't want to go down there, blah, blah, blah. So I did, my mom said I had to go. And the 2 brothers, older guys. I can remember it just like yesterday, but they weren't trying to heal anything. They were raping me.
Wow.
And I told my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she said I was just being disobedient because I didn't want to better myself, and I was lying. That wasn't really happening. I couldn't really tell my father because I knew my father would probably kill him, and I didn't want to lose my dad because that was my heart,
Yeah.
So as a child, all this stuff goes through your head, so I just kept it to myself. After my mother didn't believe me,
Right.
so it was.
And that had to be very painful for you.
Oh, it was very painful and caused me a lot of problems later on in life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I know you had a very good relationship with your dad.
I did.
And tell me a little bit about that story, how you actually, how he actually took you in,
Yeah.
and you were adopted.
my dad would come over. There was a big oak tree, and I'm from San Antonio, so there was a big oak tree, and they would gamble under the oak tree. And my dad would always tell me the story that I literally would crawl. I always say me and my dirty diaper because that's what he said. And I would crawl to him all the time, and he would pick me up and talk to me. And so one day he set me on his knee and he said, "I have to take you home with me." So he went back and he told my mom, and because they couldn't have kids, you know. So my mom says, "Well, yeah, we can get her, but we won't do anything unless we get her legally."
Okay.
And that's how they got me.
Really?
That big oak tree is still there.
Really? And now that was at the age of 11 months.
11 months.
Wow.
Yeah, because the interesting part of that was, as I said, I had other siblings, but I was the first out of the 10, the first sibling that was a half-breed.
Okay.
And my grandfather was not having that. So he would literally, the story that I was told, that my grandfather was very abusive, and my mother would have to hide me.
Okay.
Because he would come in drunk and he would literally just throw me across the room because, he didn't want me there. And I was, you got this half-breed in my house and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So my mom, at the time, she did the best that she could do. I understand that now, and she gave me away.
Yeah. And now, not only that, but you didn't know who your real father was, your biological father either, right?
Still don't.
To this day, you don't know who your biological father is. Okay. Now, how has that manifested in your life?
Well, like I said, it's caused me some problems here and there, and we'll get into that. But, I just never felt like, I really fit in, with that male, I just didn't, it's like males were always hurting me some kind of way.
Okay.
If you get molested and raped and then, you get married and he almost kills you from abuse and, so it was just, it just wasn't a good fit, It got to the point I was like, okay, no more men, let me try some women.
Okay.
But that wasn't me, so, but...
And that was you interacting out of your pain and what you had been through.
Yeah, I had a lot of pain. But I thought I was dealing with it. I thought I had dealt with it, but at the end, it was like, you really hadn't dealt with it. I really hadn't dealt with it. I was just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it and just making it worse, and,
Right. Which oftentimes is what happens when we're dealing with pain. We want to put a Band-Aid on it to cover it up. But that's all we're doing is covering it up.
Yeah.
And the wound is still there. It's just hidden by the Band-Aid. And I think you get to the root of your problems when you're able to remove that Band-Aid and actually deal with the wound. And until you do, you'll keep having the same issues reoccur in your life until you start doing those things.
That's right.
Almost like a self-therapy. You have to really talk to yourself when you have these issues. And not only that, but talk to God.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And you know what? Now, we were talking a minute ago, and you were telling me about an experience you had where you were actually in ICU for 8 months.
Yeah. I've walked a journey that most people don't come from. Like I said, from all that stuff. And because of all that pain, I was doing things. I was out there.
Yeah.
I figured there was nothing a man could do for me, but at that time, we used to say, grease my palm, and that was it. And, I was using them, so I thought. But God kept whispering in my ear, and he's like, you need to slow down. I need to talk to you. And I kept ignoring. I'll talk to you later, God. Literally.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm taking care of business. So I don't want to hear all that right now. So it was a point that he was trying to get my attention. He took my son away from my sons. I have 2 sons, and they're my world. But he took my youngest son. We'd never been separated as a unit. And he took him away from me and went to the penitentiary.
You did?
No, he did.
Oh, the son did? Okay.
My youngest son,
well, that's a part of the story I don't know nothing about.
My youngest son went to the penitentiary. I'm telling you this first so you can kind of see how God will say, okay, stripping, okay. And then I went in the hospital, in fact, the women's hospital right here, to have a very simple procedure done. And, I'm like, okay. And to be honest with you, I had one of my friends that was with me at the hospital as well, but I was living with someone else. So God was like, okay. So I got ready to leave on the 3rd day. And the last thing I remember is I heard stat. And when I woke up and was able to focus, there were machines all over my room.
Wow.
I mean, there was stuff, and then I couldn't move. There was stuff coming from my nose, my mouth. You know, it was just, at that time I weighed 220 pounds, but by the time I got through all that, I was 90 pounds soaking wet.
Wow. But you know what, Barbara? I want to hear more about that story. We're going to come back in just a moment with more of Let's Talk About It. You guys stick around. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is Barbara Hudson. Barbara, welcome back to the show. Now, when we left off, you were talking about your experience in the hospital that landed you there for 8 months in ICU.
Yeah, as I said earlier, God kept trying to get my attention because I was living a very fast life, and it wasn't a life that I was proud of.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up in ICU, and that was a point in my life. And I remember lying there, and all I could do is smell death.
Mm-hmm.
So death has a smell. And I heard outside my room, my son, my oldest son, and at the time the guy I was dating, the doctor telling him, you need to call in the family. She is not going to make it.
Okay.
And I remember lying there, couldn't talk. Remember, I had this stuff coming from my mouth, and it was, you know. And I was lying there, and I was like, okay, God. I remember thinking, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I hear you now. And I started calling on Jesus. I was
Mhm.
like, I can't die. I have 2 sons. I can't go. Please, God, I'm sorry. You know, and I literally, in my spirit realm, I was literally having this conversation with God.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people, and I said this in my book, you never, ever want a whooping from God.
Mm.
And that's what happened. So I was in ICU. I had 5 major surgeries. One of the surgeries was so much poison. And what had happened is that the doctor doing that procedure had nicked my bowel. And all of the poison was backing up, going in. It was killing me.
Wow. The toxins. Wow.
Yes. And so the last procedure that I had, the last operation I had, they had to literally leave me wide open, my stomach wide open, because there was so much poison. And they pack it and pack it and pack it. But the most astounding thing is that I had so many angels that came to me. And by angels, I mean the nurses would come in on their day off and pray with me and read scriptures.
Wow.
The doctors, I mean, so, you know, God kept showing that he had me. And when I left the hospital with a colostomy bag.
Okay.
And I went back and I told my doctor, I never will forget, I said, you know what, I'm not doing this. This ain't fitting with me, you know. This got to go. And then she said, well, you know, we don't know if we can remove that. And I was like, yeah, God already told me, you take this off. So that was my last surgery. And,
Really?
And it's been, that was 2000, so we're in 14 now.
Yeah.
Yes, I still have some complications. It has changed my life.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, I'm still standing and I'm good.
All right.
Okay,
All right. Yeah. And you know, sometimes you have to go through different things in order to get to the place where God actually wants you to be.
Yeah.
And now I know that just recently, we're gonna fast forward a little bit.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Yeah, you know where I'm going. We got to go there. Now, you just had an appearance on the Iyanla Fix My Life show.
Yes.
Where you were really depicted in a very negative light.
I was.
In a lot of ways. What was that experience like for you, Barbara?
It was an experience that I never want to live again because I was dissected to a point that it just took me to a place. It took me that dark place that I just didn't know if I could come back from. And you know, the show itself, it was about my sister and I. It was a piece of the book called Dysfunctional Sisters, and it portrayed her as the innocent victim, and it portrayed me as the big bad wolf per se.
Right.
So, but in essence, a lot of the portrayal was not explained to the point of the differences in the ages was a main factor.
Yes.
Because my sister was 9 at the time, I was 17 when we first kind of started bonding together.
Right.
But when we actually lived together, My sister was 14 and I was 24. So,
Okay.
and she came to me with a baby that I had nothing to do with. And all
Okay.
of that was really not, you know. And the one thing I did realize from the show is that because I was living the life that I was living,
Yes.
that was a reflection to where she wanted to do the things that I was doing. And,
Okay.
and you know, I didn't realize that. One of the portions of the show is where she brings her out and she says, do you know what your sister told me you taught her?
Mhm.
And, you know, by this time I've been sitting outside 3 hours. You've torn me to shreds. And I'm like,
Okay.
no, I don't know what, you know, what. She said, and so my sister said, tell her. I mean, Iyanla said, tell her. And she said, you taught me how to be a hoe.
Mm.
And I was like, you a hoe when I met you.
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told. So, you know, I mean, real talk.
Real talk.
So I was like, and you know, I just, you know, I'm like, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know, because from, if you look at the show, from the beginning of the show, she literally, we meet, and it's not a warm and fuzzy meeting. I've only met you for the first time. But she meets my sister, and she's like, oh, Geneva, you poor little thing.
Victim.
And I'm like, okay, I got this.
Okay.
I already know where
Right
this
off the
is
bat.
going. I know where this is going. I'm the wrong color, hair's too straight, and you live in some stuff in the past is what I felt.
Uh-huh.
You know. So, okay. So basically, you know, the show just kind of made me out to be, I taught her how to be a hoe. She slept with my man for 3, not 1, not 2, 3 times. I'm working. Nobody said I worked. Nobody said I had to,
Mhm.
you know, I was corporate America, whatever. Nobody said I was taking care of not 1, not 2, but 3 kids.
Mhm.
2 and 2, which were, after I found out later, were the children of the man that I was supposedly engaged to.
Okay.
And I'm taking care of the babies, thinking it was the neighbor next door or whatever, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, I did not know that this was my fiance's children.
Yeah.
She was sleeping with him. You know, so when all of it came out, it was just like devastating to me because I was like, how could you do this to me?
Yeah.
I've been there for you. You're my sister. I love you, blah, blah, blah. But I blame him too because he knew better too. I don't just blame her. But it just got so twisted around to the point that, like, I knew all of this. Like, she just came in and she was just this innocent Ave Maria soul, and she'd never done anything. And I was the sister that just said, you know, she literally looked at me and told me, she said, you a pimp.
I remember that scene from
was like,
the
what?
show. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, what? A pimp?
Yeah.
I thought pimps got paid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So, you know, and that's the way I was talking. I mean, we were literally going round and round and round. Because at one point, you know, I was just like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
You know, all gloves off for me. I'll respect anybody.
Mhm.
But don't let it fool you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
you
can
can go
bring
there
it
if you
to
have to.
I can go there.
Yeah.
But you know, I went in there to do this show for the sole purpose. I wanted my dirty stuff out there.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem in putting my dirty stuff out there
Mhm.
because there's a lot of young women that are doing the same thing that I did.
Yeah.
And I want you to know where it got me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why I do what I
Yeah.
do today.
Yeah.
Okay? So I didn't have a problem with that. I'll own up to my mistakes.
Mhm.
I should have been a better role model. But I had my own stuff, and they didn't talk about that. They didn't say,
Yeah.
well, you know, this girl been through this.
Right.
You know, my sister had been through some stuff herself.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talked about that. I'm like, okay, let's talk about how we got there. We didn't just wake up one day and go, I didn't just wake up one day and go, well, my motto is that I date nothing but married men, and you're going to treat me just as good as your wife, and I'm going to live just as good as her.
Mm-hmm.
I did that because I was tired of men using me, so I felt like I would use them.
So that was like a payback, basically.
So I thought,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, I was ruining my life.
Right.
You know, so that's why I speak now and I do what I do, because I want people to understand. Every man that say he love you, he don't love you. Every man that say he is going to be there, he's not going to be there. And the same thing with women, because I go both sides. I tell the
Mhm.
truth on both angles.
Yeah.
You know, so at the end of the day, I just wanted the truth to be told, and that's all the truth wasn't told in that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
But then I say, if you really want to know the truth, because the bottom line is, I don't care what people, I say, I have this saying, I say, you can choose to judge me or celebrate. I choose to celebrate. I'm celebrating because I am a child of God. I am sitting here, I am talking to you, and I can tell you about my filthy rags. Am I that person now? No way. Do I still have some problems? Oh, you better believe I do. But at the end of the day, I know better on a lot of other things.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
So if you want to know the truth, all you have to do is read Faces Within the Mirror, and you can know the truth.
And there's nothing like faces within the mirror. And we're going to be right back in just a moment with more of Let's Talk About It. You guys want to stick around. All right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is none other than the author of the book, Faces in the Mirror, Miss Barbara Hudson. Welcome back, Barbara.
Thank you.
We've been talking about your life, which is very interesting. And I always think it's a great thing when you're able to tell your truth so that others can be blessed by it. So often we want to hide our truth. But when we can tell our truth, we set others free as well as ourselves. And you have obviously done that in this book entitled Faces in the Mirror. Now, how did you come up with the title Faces in the Mirror?
Well, I came up with that title one day. I was looking in the mirror, and I always believe that when you look in the mirror, you see through your soul. And I just felt like what I was seeing in the mirror at that particular time, I didn't quite like. So I called it Faces Within the Mirror, because I have so many faces. There are so many faces that you see in the mirror. Sometimes you may see a beautiful woman in the mirror, sad woman, you know, a woman that you don't quite know in the mirror.
And it's you, but you don't quite know that
right.
woman.
So that's why I thought that would be a befitting title.
Yeah. Now, in conversation that you and I have had, you talked about not feeling like you were a pretty woman or a beautiful woman.
Never felt that way.
And it's very surprising to me when I look at you. I'm looking at a beautiful woman, but it was how you felt about yourself. What made you feel like you were not a beautiful woman, Barbara?
Well, I mean, when someone is constantly passing you around and doing things that you have no decision in or choice as a child, and you know, then you go through this marriage, you know, because that's what you're taught: get education, get married, marry a successful man. I married a first lieutenant in the Air Force, and I was brutally beaten, and the probably only reason I left him because he tried to kill me and my babies, and I knew then that I had to leave. So, but all this stuff keeps happening, so you just kind of like, okay, something got to be wrong with me, you know?
Right.
Am I not this? And he would tell me that too, you know, that you know, he couldn't stand me. I was ugly. I was this, you know.
Really?
And then I never really fit in school. I was called half-breed, high yellow, blah, 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 you know. So to me, none of that was whatever pretty means. To me, pretty is inside.
Yeah.
You know, and it just kind of like flower blossoms and comes out. But my flower was always dead inside of me because I was always it was always trampled upon.
Yeah.
Now I know that I'm a beautiful person inside, you know, and I pray that it shows on the outside. But as far as just a physical beauty, I've never felt that way. In fact, it used to anger me because I'm like, why do people always say I'm pretty? But let's see, next year I'll be 60.
Okay.
And I wanted to be married. I'm not married. I always said I'd never get married again until my sons got grown. Well, I have a 40-year-old son and I have a 38-year-old son. And I'm like, okay, Lord, hello, they grown now. You know? So
where yet?
You know? So I'm like, okay, you know. So to me, when I think of, you know, but then I started learning a lesson too. There are a lot of beautiful women that are not married. There are a lot of beautiful women that are cheated on. There are a lot of beautiful women that are damaged.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just depends on what beauty is. To me, like I said, beauty just comes from inside here. But back in the day, I just didn't like to hear that I was pretty or you're beautiful, and I didn't like that.
Yeah. And so often, the way that we feel about ourselves ends up reflecting in our behavior, you know. And so when you don't feel beautiful or you don't feel sexy, you don't feel pretty, you don't care about yourself in that manner, different things will happen. And we open the doors for different things to happen when our self-esteem is at hand. And so often our self-esteem is a big reflection of how we feel about ourselves and what we allow to happen to ourselves, you know, when we're not loving ourselves in the proper way. And because of some of your experiences, it made you feel like that. Now, when we talk about the different feelings that people had toward you and calling you half-breed, this, that, and the other, you didn't fit into your family.
I didn't fit in because, you know, as we were talking earlier,
Mhm.
you know, when I was 9 was when my great aunt and uncle told me that I was adopted.
Yeah.
And they said that you're going to go meet your mom. And I was all excited, you know. Again,
Right.
the mirror comes to part. Because when I look in the mirror, I saw these long pigtails and real bright skin me.
Mhm.
So I'm like, that's my mom. You know, my mom's going to look like that. And, you know, I'm a kid, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So when I saw my mom for the first time, she was 4'9", and she was very dark complected.
Okay.
And she dipped snuff. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, that ain't my mama. You know, I mean, y'all, at 9 years old, you have this picture. But then when I got to know my mother, she had, and that's something she left with me, she had a heart of gold. And I got to know my mother. It was so ironic. I got to know my mother in 2 ways. They called me and told me years ago that she was dying. And
Okay.
so I came home. And I went in the room, and she had had many, many, many strokes, so she couldn't talk. She was like a vegetable. But she was trying so hard to talk, you know. And I never will forget, I went up to her, and I stroked her hair, and I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, I love you and thank you. And I said, you can rest now. I understand.
Mhm.
You know, I truly got it. You
Yeah.
know, you saw something in me, and you said, okay, this one, we're going to take over here.
Yeah.
You know. So I told her that, and I made peace.
Mhm.
And I just got back on the highway, I-10, I never will forget, and my phone rang, they said she's gone. So I was the last child that she saw.
Wow.
And then at her funeral, can you imagine being at the funeral, and at the funeral, all these people, from the winos to the people, just everyday people, to high people, everybody knew my mother. My mother had this thing that she would fix beans and cornbread and biscuits. Everybody would eat her stuff, but she was poor. She was mistreated, she was poor, but she would give the last of her, whatever she had.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned about her at the funeral, and they called all the children out, but my name was not called, because nobody knew who I was.
Oh wow. Okay.
Nobody knew that I was her child.
Yeah.
And you know, so, but when I sit there and I listen to all of the things that they said about my mom, I was like, yeah, that's my mom. My
Yeah.
mom's a good woman, you know, and a lot of that she left for me.
Yeah.
So,
Now, Barbara, and that's a beautiful thing,
Mhm.
that was instilled in you, and that you recognize that, and not only that, but that your mother had peace when she
Yes.
left, because she got to talk to you, and I think that's probably something that she wanted.
yeah,
And to say that she passed immediately after you left.
she did. She left me, and it was hard because I never felt she loved me. Because she never embraced me, you
Okay.
know, or anything like that. So, but then that day when she couldn't talk and she was trying so hard, and when I did stroke her hair and kissed her, I knew then that she was at peace. I just felt it, you know. She was at peace, and she left in peace.
Wow. And she also had some of the same experiences you had too, didn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Within her family nucleus as well, from what I read.
There's a lot of incest that goes through my family to this day. There's a lot of bad stuff to this
Yeah.
day, and my mom went through a lot. My mom was artistic as well,
Right, I remember reading that.
so my mom went through a lot. She was never treated as a normal person.
Yeah.
She really wasn't, and her own siblings didn't do her right. You know, she
Okay.
raised everybody's kids. She didn't get an education. I mean, she couldn't even count or read.
Okay.
So she had a rough life, but she's in
Yeah.
heaven now.
Right, right. And to the fact that she had 18 kids. And I mean, that's just, and chances are some of those kids could have very well been from family members.
Could have been.
Yeah.
It still goes on today. There are some that are. Yeah.
Wow. And you know, that's one of the things that we tend to sweep under the rug. We don't want to talk about these things that are happening within our families, with family members, and molestation, with uncles sleeping with nieces and all this kind of stuff. But I think the truth needs to be told. You know, I think that type of thing has been swept under the rug long enough. And in order to save other people and save other kids, sometimes you need to tell the truth,
You have to.
so that the other kids don't become a victim.
But there's a side. There's another side to that. You have to hear the truth. Because me telling it, like I tried to tell my mom I was
Right.
being raped, she didn't want to hear it. So I had to carry that. So I always tell people, fathers, daughters, sons, mothers, sons, daughters, hear what they're saying, listen to them. It might hurt you, might break your heart, because if it's your brother, if it might be your father, but we're still mere people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You've got to hear what they're saying. You've got to, because somebody has to start breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
Because if you don't break the cycle, it just continues on and on. You know, so you got to hear. You got to
Right.
hear what you don't want to hear.
And it opens up the door for more victims when that type of thing takes place. And you know, your story is not unusual in that when you hear young girls telling their mothers, "Mom, this person did this to me, or that person did that to me," so often the mother is in denial with that child. And as a result of that, that child is walking around carrying that burden. And then the fact that you're being victimized twice. Number one, by the perpetrator, and number two, by your mother, who you look at as the protector. You should be able to go to your mother with whatever you have to go to your mother with, and your mother should have an open mind to listen to what you have to say.
Right.
And so you're actually victimized twice in that particular situation. But guess what? You're still standing.
I'm still standing.
You're still standing. We're going to be back with more of Let's Talk About It in just a moment. You guys want to stick around. All right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is Miss Barbara Hudson, the author of the book Faces in the Mirror. Now, Barbara, we talked about your relationship with your sister, which was depicted in Iyanla Vanzant's Fix My Life.
Yes.
What is that relationship like today with your sister?
Love from afar. And God spoke to me through Joel Osteen after the show. I was saved with a girlfriend of mine, and I couldn't sleep, so it was like 4 something in the morning, and Joel was on, and I like Joel Osteen. He was on, and he said, sometimes you have to love your family people from afar. And then he says, and when you see them at the family reunion, you say, oh, well, you know, I was going to call you. It's been so busy. And then go back in the room and pray for that lie. So that was my thing, that sometimes you just have to love people from afar. I love my sister dearly. I love her because we were the most bonded. I love her. And unfortunately, I'm burying my oldest sister Friday.
Yeah.
So
sorry to hear that too.
But I love my sisters. I love my sisters and my brothers. I love them dearly. But again, I've learned that sometimes some people you just have to love from afar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of those situations.
Oh yes.
Well, okay. You know, and you're right. You're right. And that's a choice for you. And I call that choosing your battles. I want to touch on something real quick.
Okay.
That I didn't quite understand when I actually watched the show on television. The age difference between you and your sister. Because what I saw and the way I understood it was like it was a 3-year age gap. Like she was 14 and you were 17 and you had brought her in. But you were actually 10 years older than her.
I'm 10 years older than her.
Yeah.
When I first, remember I said I met my siblings at 9?
Yes.
So that's when I first met her at 9, and there's 10 years difference. And then after I got married, went away, came back, she was 14, I was 24.
Okay.
So that was, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then ultimately she had
4.
She had 4 kids, but 3 of them was for your
ex-fiance.
For your ex-fiance. Okay. And the way that I understood it, it was 2 of them. When I watched the show, I thought it was 2 kids that she had, but it was 3 that she had for your ex-fiance.
Right. 3.
Wow. Now, wow.
That's what I said too.
Wow. And so also on that Iyanla show, when she asked you about how did you not know that your boyfriend was sleeping with your sister, you said.
I said, well, I was trying to tell her that, you know, I was traveling all the time.
Yeah.
At the time I was a makeup artist, I was traveling everywhere, you know. So that's my sister. You know, this is the man I'm getting ready to marry. You know, we've been a family. Why wouldn't I trust, you know, either one of them? And so, I mean, you know, and I was very naive, you know. I didn't, my sister was far more advanced streetwise than I was. And so I guess, you know, just, you know, I blame both of them, but I blame him because you were supposed to love me. You definitely knew better because you were older.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, and when I found out, I was going to kill him.
Literally.
Literally. Butcher knife him. Gut him. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just so happened that, you know, he got out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, you know, he never came back to see his children. He's never said that they were his children. And his children, those children love me. We have such a bond.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. They love me. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
They call me Nana. I'm Nana. You know, I'm not going to blame them. They had nothing to do with it.
And you can't.
You know, even though my sister tried to poison, they still love me,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But at the end of the day, you know, for me not being there, you know, day in and day out, yeah, I mean, you know, I didn't know how to be there. I was trying to get out and get a job, going to school, whatever, take care of my sister, take care of the kids that she had, and take care of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, you know, but I will say this as I look at society today, be very careful who you leave your children with.
Yeah.
Because you just can't trust anybody anymore.
Right.
So, you know, I take full responsibility for that because I should have never left them, you know, there. I mean, you know, I guess, you know, because thinking back, I'm like, I just never thought there was a reason to just trust either one of them, you know. But.
You know, I want to tip my hat to you for actually taking your sister to try to raise her to have a better life. And I think that's one of the things that we overlook when we see that segment. We're not really looking at the fact that you actually cared enough about your sibling to take them in and try to raise them and try and give them a better life. I think all that everybody was focusing on was the fact that the boyfriend slept with the sister, she had 3 babies, you should have known, and all this. But even when it came to that, you did not know, and you were led to believe that it was someone in the neighborhood that you guys lived in, and you didn't find out that it was him until after the 3rd child.
At the hospital.
At the hospital. So all that time, the sibling was saying, this baby is for this, and this, and then you find out in reality that it was actually for the 3rd child was actually for the boyfriend, all of them for the boyfriend.
But you know, the most ironic thing is I still love those babies. I mean, they're grown now, but I still love my sister through all of this. You know, I mean, she can pick up the phone. I still run to her rescue. You know, that will never change. I just can't be in that situation all the time, you know. But I still love her. You know, she's my sister, you know. My siblings, I still love them, you know. But we just, you know, our lives are so different. And the way they portrayed that was upper class sister, low class sister. I'm like,
exactly.
Really? Okay, is it my fault? Because my mom gave me away. I ain't had nothing to do with that.
Right.
You know, so the people that she gave me to, they gave me an education, so I'm wrong for that. You know, I went to college, I'm wrong for that. You know, okay, that didn't make sense.
Right.
You know, no one said, well, when you got during the time you were getting your education or whatever, you said, come on, let me help you. Come on, let me help you.
Right.
Because I love them, you know. I mean, you know.
And I know one of the things that that was brought up in the segment on the show was that your sister had a dream of becoming, I forget what it was, and creating her career, and that you never supported that. That was another negative thing that was said.
Okay, well, I will say this much, and I want to say this. I have met in my lifetime a lot of people that have come from very, very, very bad situations, from the mom being on crack, to being shot, to being father beating the hell out of them or whatever, and they are doing just fine because they had persistence and they knew what they wanted to do, and they put God first, and at the end of the day they got what they needed to get to better themselves.
Right.
If you really want to do something in life, whether I was the biggest you know what in the world, if you really wanted to accomplish something in your life, there is no reason you couldn't accomplish that. And in all my life, and I'm almost 60 years old, as I said earlier, that's the first time I'd ever heard that you wanted to be an X-ray technician.
Was that day? Was that on the show?
God is my witness. I thought I was going to fall out the chair.
Okay.
But the most interesting thing was when we got back to the hotel, she told her daughter, I did what I set out to do.
I did what I set out to do, and what was that, as you see it? Destroy
she told me. She said, yeah. She said, I wanted you to look bad. And her daughter cried and said, why would you do that to her? My sister said those words, I did what I set out to do. And I said, well, kudos to you.
Really?
that's who my sister is. I love her to death, but yeah. I mean, I'm sure some people in the audience can identify that, you know, you have some people that they just, you know, no matter what you do or how you do it, they just gonna cut you. You know?
Yeah.
So what do you do for those kind of people? You just pray for them. There's nothing else you can do, because with me, the kind of person I am, I don't want to end up cutting you, so I got to pray for you. You know? So you just
Ain't
gotta
nothing like keeping it real.
Yeah, you just got to do what you got to do. Love her to death. We'll always love her. But she has that evil mentality. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
She knows how to play that victim.
Mm.
I've seen it too many times. I told you some things out there.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know.
You know, and Barbara, that's one of the reasons why, one of the many reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. Number one, you had a very compelling story and once it hit the Iyanla, of course, that was a whole different thing. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell your truth, so that you can clear up some things, because of course people see the show and they walk away with their own story, but they don't know the backside of the story. And you know, like we hear, there's always three sides: yours, mine, and then the truth.
That's right.
And so I'm glad you came today, because you were able to shed some light on your truth, and we appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we go, Barbara, how do the audience people get in touch with you? How do we find out more about Barbara Hudson?
Oh, they can Google Barbara Hudson, or they can go to www.movet, which is MOVET Productions with an S.com. The book is on Amazon. It's on Kindle.
Okay.
Ebook or something like that.
Mhm.
Or you can just go to Facebook and put in Barbara Hudson. Faces Within the
Facebook,
Mirror.
Barbara
That's
Hudson.
what I'm going to tell you. It's faces within the mirror.
Faces within the mirror. Now, you know what? I don't mind being corrected. So I said faces in, it's faces within the mirror. Go on and straighten me up, Miss Hudson. I ain't mad at you. Faces within the mirror.
Yeah.
That's the book that you guys want to get. Barbara, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Let's Talk About It. Thank you very much. All right. Now, for more information on this show, you can certainly reach us at Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. Until next time, folks, we'll see you then.